gaming industry is very risk averse that way. Rush Gaming Universe, on the other hand, has been aggressive, very driven, very innovative that way. When the entire industry is sitting risk averse, how did you people, when you people entered, were fully defined?
You become a commodity, then what happens is in commodity businesses, the margins tend to go to nothing because you're fighting only. I try to, as much as possible, avoid being in that place. Gaming is a source of economic opportunity and build a platform where customers can also become owners in the very platform they help create so they can participate in the economic upside. This is where the blockchain piece comes into play. By the way, we were going to build the Rush as a blockchain platform from day one. The reason I wanted to build Rush on the blockchain first is because of the big lesson that I had from Hike Messaging. We have about 6 million monthly active users, out of which only 2.6 million people pay.
Hi Kavin, welcome to Masters Union. Really excited to have you on campus.
Thank you.
So I'll do a quick round of introductions and then we can hit off with the first question.
Sure.
So firstly, I have Krishna from the undergraduate batch of Masters Union. He comes from a family business background and is a passionate gamer. We have Tilottama, ex-JP Morgan, and currently writing a thesis on gaming. We have Daksh, again from the postgraduate batch of Masters Union. Been in the gaming industry for a long time, leading the blockchain community in Masters Union. And me and Shauradeep, we have been ex-founders, been in a bit of the scene, VC Capital, built a tech platform, 2 million users, and now trying to build something in gaming.
Amazing.
Really excited to be with you, man.
Thanks for having me.
So, Kavin, I've been following you on Twitter for the past 5 to 6 years.
Oh boy.
I was a user of Hike. I used to see what you used to post, and last 3 years. So, at that time, Hike Direct, Hike Wallet, Hike Moji, all these things were being launched, and you were sharing content regarding that.
Yeah.
So, I would like to understand that. How do you think, or what's your framework when you need to launch something new, or maybe discontinue something which is not that successful? Like, how do you think, or how do you do away with those things? Like, if you can just.
Yeah, look, it's a great question. I think it's the ultimate product management question.
Yeah.
And I love it. I'm product founder myself, and I'm very heavily involved in the product and everything that I build. So you have to zoom out first. Let's zoom out, right? And ask, why for, let's say, a business that's running, has customers, is generating revenue, has, let's say, some profit or not yet profitable, why would you need to launch something new? Chal raha hai, it's working, let it be. And the reason for launching something new is because number one, I'd say, is in today's day and age, customers are just incredibly, dissatisfied. And I feel like with so much technology that's come in the last decade or two, there's always something more you can do. Technology keeps evolving, keeps getting better, faster, cheaper. So you got to kind of keep up with that and use that technology to keep building for your customers. Second is, the best businesses are ones that have a strong moat against competition, or actually ultimately no competition. So you also have to innovate and build new things, not to just build for your customers, but also build a moat around the business. We at Hike call it DHM, delightful, hard to copy, and margin enhancing. We love this term. So we always ask ourselves, is something that we're building going to be delightful for the customer? Will it be hard to copy for the market? And ultimately, will it enhance margins for the business? And so that's one framework of looking at building new things. And when you're taking things off, we have a kill list that we revisit every quarter, and it's the hardest thing to take things off, by the way. Because people who build the features are so attached. Ek aur mahina, one more week, one more sprint. And ultimately, you have to remind people and also yourself that your time is limited, so you want to work on things that have good ROI. And so if things are not working out after a certain period, you have to assess it very objectively and say, maybe it's time to kill this. And also, by the way, killing more often than not is a great thing because you end up simplifying so much. And sometimes we can kill also to simplify. The product becomes simple for the customer. There's one less feature to understand. The design becomes simple, and the biggest one is the code becomes simple. So you have less technical debt, less QA, things to test, and so on and so forth. So that's a good framework to think about this.
Got it.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. But I think, is there something, a pros or cons list that you actually create in your mind or in the team, that this removing this feature will actually Hike will lose 5 million users, but if we launch this, then we might cover that user base up. Do you think like this? Like, do you think about gaining users, gaining revenue? Is revenue always the North Star metric that you follow? Like, this period, maybe the last 5-6 years?
Yeah, definitely in Rush, I would say revenue is an output metric. So the inputs take care of the outputs. So features influence the inputs, never the outputs. So the input to revenue could be, average revenue per user, how many days they come back in the app, and how much they spend per session, the win-loss ratio, etc., etc. So we look at a large chunk of metrics. If you look at our daily dashboards, if I show them to you, they're huge. And different teams are looking at different aspects of the daily dashboards. So I come back to it, which is ultimately, you have to build things that are going to further the impact you're having on the customer, and also hopefully do it in a way where the business is also progressing in the right direction. And if something comes in the way of this, you kill it. It is as simple as that. It doesn't need to be more complicated. Then let's say you go one level deeper, the things that are actually adding more complexity in the app that from a metric standpoint are not being used. Do you really need them? Sometimes, by the way, the answer is yes. And sometimes the answer is no. And in some cases, the answer can be yes if you're focused on building a delightful experience. Example, if you use Rush compared to other, let's say, similar products, it's a night and day difference. We do a lot of small things in the app to delight the customer because ultimately it's a gaming platform. Now, the objective lens can say, isko nikal do. But ultimately, human beings are emotional creatures too. We like the delight. And so, building, for example, at the intersection of both is a value we have. We notice other people don't have that value. So it's also a very personal decision, a cultural decision on what you would kill and what you would not kill, and what you would focus on and what you would not focus on.
But while starting and pivoting from a messaging app to building a Rush gaming universe, like what were the key metrics you thought in the industry that, like, I'm choosing now gaming as per se, and at the same time, what were the key challenges you faced while starting to build it?
Yeah, it's a great question, and the answer is not very straightforward, right? When you're pivoting a company, there's no playbook. And I looked, there's no playbook. So, going beyond the decision of deciding to shut down Hike and starting the pivot, we had to figure out again a framework through which we viewed this decision. And, one of the things that I learned very early on in life, I discovered Zen Buddhism when I was 24, 25. And one of the things I learned from that was perspective, which is, if I were to ask you guys, what's the color of his shirt today? And let's say you had a magnifying lens in front of your eyes. And what tends to happen is people have a lens through which they view the world. And everybody's lens is different. It's a combination of your childhood, your experiences, your environment, the things you're working on, and yours may be red, yours may be blue, yellow, purple, etc. And if you were to ask you what's the color of the shirt, we'd all have different answers. And people get very stuck on their perspective, not realizing there's a big magnifying glass in front of your eyes. And so if you become aware and say, oh, wait, I have a lens and mine is purple. What is yours? Show me. Oh, it's red. Have you seen mine? So, and I say this because you need the clear framework and lens to look at a situation and decision. And the framework was, if you want to pivot this entire business, and assuming we've got enough cash in the bank, etc., the right team, where do we go? Number one, it had to be something we were excited about. It's very, very, very important. Because the person you are, normal and excited, are very different people. This is your full power as a person. So you have to find something we're very passionate about, very excited about. Second, something we could truly be the best at. Third, where the business model was clear. And a lot of people don't realize that if you look at the top 100 companies in the world by market cap, almost all these companies, barring one or two, had their business model figured out very early on. I think after the internet came in, software made things very cheap. The mindset changed to let's go fund things without the right business model, which I think there is value in that. But as a result of a pivot, we had to this time figure out the business model. And fourth was something that was much bigger than us. Call me idealistic. And by the way, you may not believe this, but I'm a very lazy person. And I need something much bigger than me to work towards, to pull myself to go do something in the world. So these are the 4 criteria. And then the execution of this is, you have some hypotheses. We had 4 of them, and we had to go and try and hit a shot on target. We tried building a content app first, then a Meet You People app, and then gaming, and all of these in some way had traction. But this one checked all the boxes. And we got PM Fit, which was great because we had spent 18 months figuring things out, and we've scaled now pretty fast. So yeah.
I had a question around that. So, like, how did you decide on like Web3 as a segment as opposed to, let's say, fantasy sports or casual gaming?
It's a great question, and the answer to that question is we never chose Web3. Like, we didn't even know what Web3 was, but inadvertently we landed up at it because we were trying to solve a customer problem, and we realized blockchain is the best way to go do it. So there was an idea that we had, which is if we pivot the business and build something new, in that platform, could customers also become owners in the platform they help create, so they can also participate in the economic upside if the platform grew in value. And if with Rush, the idea was gaming as a source of economic opportunity, so there's an element of gaming and earning. Could we also unlock more avenues of money? One of the biggest ways to create wealth is to own things in the offline world. And with the blockchain, you had this transformational technology that could potentially let you own things online. And then we stumbled onto the word Web3 and said, okay, this makes a lot of sense. So, and there's a lesson in there, by the way, lesson that I've learned the hard way, and so many other entrepreneurs, which is you move backwards from the customer to the technology, not forward from the technology to the customer. It changes everything. Your success rate will increase if you work from the customer to the technology. So that's how we landed up Web3.
So, Kevin, like you, I too belong from a family business background, and everyone here in Masters Union advised me to join my father's business after I skilled myself here. So, where did the conviction and confidence in yourself come from to start Hike and not join your father's business?
That's a great question, and there are two. I'll break the answer into 2 parts, right? One is actually, I wouldn't say that my father's business is a family business. It's not. It's an institution. There's a little bit of a difference there, and it's a different concept in India, right? But very understood in the West. So Airtel is an institution. And what an institution it is, right? Big impact in the country and the world, huge company, right? And as an institution, there was no expectation for us to join and be part of all of it. It was never meant to be ours, in some ways. And the same way, you have Microsoft and Apple and Google and all these companies started by some incredible founders that are huge. There's no expectation for their kids to join those companies. As a matter of fact, in the West, it doesn't happen. It's very normal for this to happen. So I think that's sort of one way to look at this. And as a result of which, we were raised very independently. And also, by the way, I was born in 1987. There was no Airtel until 95. So people don't realize this. And the second thing is, I was just, the only thing I wanted in my entire life was my freedom. And maybe I was raised in a strict, upbringing and so on and so forth, but I just wanted to be free, right? And do things on my own term. And because I realized very early on I was different. I was a little bit of a misfit. I realized very, very early on. And the suit and tie thing was not for me. And so I remember also, by the way, going to Google to intern in 2007. They were a lot smaller back then. And I walked into the campus and everybody was in their shorts and chappals playing volleyball. And I was like, what is this? It was like a college campus. But work happened. Some of the best minds worked there. And I was like, oh, I can come work in a place like this, or I can build a place like this. In India, there was no place like that, right? I always wanted to, and that was a inspiration and benchmark for me to build an environment where I could succeed, right? Because I knew I would not succeed in the suited booted environment. Yeah.
So, Kavin, casual gaming is currently on the rise in India. $300 million market, but it's fastly expanding. But sadly, day 7 to day 14 retention in casual gaming always has been like 6 to 5%. So, do you feel loyalty programs integrating in casual gaming actually makes sense?
Make a ton of sense. Makes so much sense. I think loyalty programs in any product make a ton of sense, but you have to design them in a way they work. And we just launched a loyalty program in Rush, and I'm using that as an example. The first version was not great. But MVPs also tend to be, learning shots you take on target. But you have to design the loyalty program to work in the right way. And if you design the loyalty program to work in the right way, why would it not give you tremendous benefits?
Essentially.
What do you think? Right?
So that's what we're building currently. We are trying to understand what we understood, that if there's a white label solution which is integrated by gaming studios in their own ecosystems, and in casual gaming there's no instant gratification or monetization. So you align that, access to a reward store, tons of brands, digital physical rewards, zero party data, new concept, use it for targeted programmatic advertising. You give brands an entrance, you give users instant gratification.
I love that. As a matter of fact, if you're building that, we would partner with you.
We would love
Because
that.
you would take all the the overhead off us to go talk to brands. And I think it's a brilliant idea for not just casual gaming, but for, I think, other industries too.
Definitely, that's like we've been talking around, and we would love to talk to everybody.
Yeah, of course, because India also is a very value-seeking market, by the way,
Actually,
right? So people look for deals and stuff like that, and so that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
surely, like this has been.
What
trying-
made you come up with the idea?
So essentially, Shawad, my co-founder, was writing a thesis on gaming, and I was looking into loyalty, how brands work, and how interesting concepts are in the West. How, with user permission, data can be used more effectively towards brand solutions, and kind of clicked. Casual gaming, low retention, people need to stay more. RNG people earn. Casual, etc. Midcore people don't earn much. Casual gamers, 35 plus, uncles and aunties, majorly people who were okay to pay with. What do you do? Give them access, give them a Netflix subscription, Starbucks coupon,
Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
digital rewards, and so on.
So email me afterwards.
Surely, we do that.
Yeah. By the way, sorry, I feel like I didn't answer your question fully. You asked, a lot of people tell you or ask you why you're not joining your family business, neither you've upskilled. So, everybody's different. So you are, genetically and biologically, we're all individual, unique people. So I think ultimately you have to write your own story. I think that applies to everybody. And by the way, that story can also be walking into your, family business and taking it to the next level. Or it can be, building something of your own. It can be joining an early stage startup. You got to write your own story, and I think you just got to figure out your own why. Why do you do what you do? If you figure that out, the rest becomes pretty easy. Yeah, I thought I'd just say that. Yeah.
But Kevin, I also want to know about what's your day-to-day look like. I really want to understand how your mindset works or what you do in your free time.
So those are multiple questions.
Yeah.
Which one do you want to start with?
Start with what's your day-to-day like?
My day-to-day is pretty intense. I get up in the morning. I'm not a super early morning person. Never have been. But I'll get up in the morning, and the first hour of my morning is dedicated towards yoga and silence. And that is some asanas. A lot of it is just sitting in meditation. And actually, before that, I will try my best to get 10 minutes of sunlight. I am the happiest and most productive when I have sunlight. So I need, and it's good for the biological circadian rhythm as well. So I get some sunlight in the eyes and on the body, and then I sit, and then I'll work out. Not all days. Once every, actually 2 or 3 days, I'll do strength training in the morning, and then I get into work. And once my meditation is done, then like my phone's with me, you're working while you're in the gym as well. The day starts, right? And my first meeting would not be before 10:30 in the morning. The first meeting. By that time, I can also, finish all this stuff, but also just respond to all the pending emails and so on and so forth, and all the messages that I have on Telegram, right? And then my first meeting starts at 10:30, and then the just day goes, right? And then I have, I would say, 2 chunks of things that happen on my calendar, maybe 3 actually. One is meetings with the team. So we have these weekly business reviews. Let's take like a Tuesday, for example. We have like 3 like team meetings on Tuesdays. And those meetings will last, let's say, 45 minutes each, back to back. Then after that, I will have most likely some one-to-ones in my calendar, which are a different kind of meeting. And then I have time blocked idly daily to solve my own problems. I have my own list on Asana, my own backlog to get through. Either I'm working on the new pitch deck, or there's an idea that I have, I need to go detail out, I want to talk to the teams. There's some design that needs to be reviewed by me. My own work, personal sort of work, right? And as a creative person, I actually love doing that work the most. I'm a product person more than anything else. And that day is a blueprint that just repeats every day. And there's no end or stop. Things just go. And I don't mind it because we're obsessed with what we do. I don't know if it's the most healthiest thing possible. But also I plan if you look at my calendar, you think I'm nuts. Everything is color coded. My food is color coded. My meetings are color coded. So I'll break my fast at like 12:30. That's like a brunch lunch. Then I'll eat dinner at like 7:30. There are some days when I don't work out in the mornings. I will actually walk in the evenings just to because in a remote setup, we're remote by the way. Yeah, you're sitting in front of a monitor all day long. Your mind can go nuts. So you have to force yourself to break away and go for a walk. But the days are pretty intense. And this is describing what I call an operating week. So I have 2 modes I've realized. One is an operating week, one is a thinking week. So my operating weeks are jam-packed with meetings. I actually have very little thinking time. You have to unblock the teams, et cetera, run the company. And then when things are running, there are not as many meetings, then I have more free time on my calendar. And some days, large chunks, 3-4 hours empty on my calendar, where I'll take a problem and I'll sit with it. And I like sitting with problems. And I think I think too many people focus on efficiency. And efficiency can make a founder and CEO in a company very fragile. You need some space to wander. Creativity happens in wandering. The mind has to go. You have to have some discussions. It can be informal. And some of my brightest ideas come, and our brightest ideas come in time like that. So I think that answers the first question. What was the second question?
How does your mindset work? Like when you are approaching a problem, how do you think about validating it or coming up with a solution for the same?
Great question. Great question. And I would highly recommend you read a book called Clear Thinking by Shane Parrish. Probably you read it. It's a recent book. He's great, by the way. His book was also fantastic. And I love how he articulates separating the problem and solution spaces. We've all made the mistake, by the way, of jumping straight into the solution. Idea aa gaya, banao usko, right? And then you don't ask the questions around it, which is, wait, what's the problem? Who are you building for? And some of our failures, by the way, have come like this. And finally, we learned, I think a couple of years ago. So if an idea comes to you, and by the way, if it's your own idea, I think this is a good example. You think your ideas are the best. Everybody does. Mera idea hai to badhiya hoega, right? And it's the most dangerous thing possible. And there's a lovely quote, I forget who it's from, which is, believing in your own greatness is the beginning of the death of your creativity. Because the ego doesn't allow for incubation of an idea. It just wants to believe and act. So you have to make space to, incubate an idea in your mind. And so from that perspective, you have to understand what problem you're solving and who you're solving it for. And then see if this idea you have fits inside that. Or if you have an idea, find ways to articulate the problem. And what tends to happen is the idea tends to change once the problem is clear. So problem space, solution space is very important. Once you have an idea, a solution, then you also probably have a big idea. And you can't test that, or you can test that. You can test that, but if it's a big idea, if it's complicated, you may need to spend 3 months building it. So then you have to ask, okay, what's the risk-reward trade-off here? If I spend 3 months building this idea, and if it doesn't work out, we're in trouble. So can I test this idea, but not take 3 months, but take, let's say, 2 weeks or 4 weeks? And so can you shrink this down to a V1 or an MVP? And this is the software way of doing things, as you guys know so well. And have a hypothesis. Very clear hypothesis. Write it down. We believe if you're going to launch this, it's going to lead to X, Y, Z. So the simple answer is, if you have a hypothesis mindset on everything, everything becomes very easy. Because that need for certainty that we all have as human beings can be dealt with in product development. And this hypothesis thing applies to everything, by the way. It can apply to, our entire company, by the way, is a product itself. The whole company is a product, and every function is run like a product. For example, so the people operation team was launching something called Meet and Bond, a way for people to connect offline, because in a remote first environment, you have to build those bridges. And you should see the document for this feature. It's a feature of working in Hike, Meet and Bond. So we have a hypothesis for that too. And so there's a hypothesis, and I just saw the results. The hypothesis showed us that the Meet and Bond was wildly successful. And this is really good because it holds you accountable too, right? And so this is some of the ways we do things at Hike, and I guess how we think about stuff. Yeah.
Did you receive an acquisition opportunity offer from Facebook or where?
No, Facebook wanted to kill
WhatsApp
us.
maybe?
They're very ruthless as a company, and hats off to them. We never got an acquisition offer. Never even considered it. The goal was always to pivot the company and find some new
Maybe
waters.
You were building Hike at that point of time?
We had interest from Tencent, who ended up becoming an investor. They were never looking to acquire the company, but looking to strategically partner with a similar platform in the Indian market. That's what happened.
A follow-up on that maybe. When you're building, do you optimize for your wealth creation or the impact that your company is creating?
Why can't it be both?
I don't know if both is like either you'll make $10 billion or you'll make $1 billion.
Actually, no. The funny thing is that the people who care about wealth the least tend to make the most money. People who are idealistic and want to change the world and build something big, who have their basic needs met, and that's important. You get there as fast as possible. After that, you notice this with the richest people in the world. You see them. They're most accomplished people who have the biggest impact. They're not, walking around in fancy cars and so on and so forth. They don't care about that stuff. So I think it's extremely important that you get to a place as fast as possible where you don't have to worry about making ends meet. Because once you're there, then a lot of time and space opens up for you to be the most creative self. And then figure out where could you be the most useful in this world. And if you do that and ask that question, then what you'll do is you'll play your own game. And that's very, very important because nobody can play your game better than you. And if you do that successfully, consistently, along the way, you will find something that clicks with you, and that takes off in a big way. And then after that, by the way, you'll have an opportunity. Someone may come and say, "Hey, I want to buy a company for $500 million." And even if you own 50% of that company, that's a lot of money. And then as a founder, you'll have a choice. And I know many founders, by the way, who said, "You know what? I'm a 0 to 1 person. I like building things and taking them to 1. And maybe 2, 3, 4. Iske baad mera interest nahi hai." And they sell the company. And then they go start off the next company. This is the funny thing. They make a lot of money, but they get so bored, they'll go and start the next company because they're not driven by that at the end of the day. Then I know many people who say, "I want to make this big, but I don't fully understand how to do the 1 to 100. Let's go build an executive team, maybe hire a CEO to help scale this business. And because I like the impact that I'm having." That's a very personal choice. That's a good question.
Okay, so I'll come up with an industry question now. Well, honestly, what we've seen the gaming industry is very risk averse that way. But Rush Gaming Universe, on the other hand, has been aggressive, very driven, very innovative that way. So, when the entire industry is sitting risk averse, how did when you people entered, were fully defined that we'll do it differently?
It's funny that things look so different on the outside than they are on the inside. Because the inside, there's naturally, when you're a creative company building software, there is chaos, good chaos, right? A lot of experiments are running, flying, testing, things work, things don't work, you double down, kill, chop. There's a lot going on, right? So I think the underlying assumption with which I've operated has been that the world changes very fast. I mean, especially now with things like AI, the world is moving at a rocket-shaped pace. So in a world that's moving really, really fast, the biggest risk is not taking any risk. You know, if something works today, there's no guarantee it's going to work tomorrow. The world is going to change. So you have to keep up. So we've always had that mentality. And second is, I'm always on the lookout for DHMs. Delightful, hard to copy, margin enhancing advantages. Because ultimately you have to build a moat. If you don't build a moat in a business, you become a commodity. If you become a commodity, then what happens is, in commodity businesses, the margins tend to go to nothing because you're fighting only on price. And I try to, as much as possible, avoid being in that place. And with Rush now, I think we've found a couple of DHMs, but I think the ultimate moat for Rush is the network. And networks are the ultimate moat. Once you have a very big liquidity, it's very hard to match that liquidity unless you spend your own capital and time. But then if you just clone us, no one's going to shift because you don't have the additional differentiation to move off.
On that note, like continuing, so what's the ultimate goal for the Rush Gaming?
Gaming is a source of economic opportunity, and build a platform where customers can also become owners in the very platform they help create, so they can participate in the economic upside. This is where the blockchain piece comes into play. And by the way, we were going to build the Rush as a blockchain platform from day one, but we realized the technology is so early. And this is the weird thing is, the reason I wanted to build Rush on the blockchain first is because of a big lesson that I had from Hike Messenger. The ultimate reason why we couldn't sustainably make Hike Messenger work is because we were building for the constraints of that time. When 2G became 4G, when smartphones became better, the super app was not needed. The smartphone became the super app. And we were building for the technology constraints of that time. And so the biggest lesson was, don't do that again. And I think to begin with, we went completely the opposite way. So let's go build on some forward-looking technology. And we realized, wait, it's too early. So we found a middle ground. And so that's the big vision, which is, can you build Rush into a virtual gaming nation? And if you look at a nation, I like the metaphor, by the way, because a nation does many things, but the 4 or 5 things that stand out to us is, nation first has access. There's a passport or a visa you get, to be part of the nation. And depending on if you have a passport or a visa, you're a citizen or you're a tourist. And if you look at Rush today, by the way, we have about 6 million monthly active users, out of which only 2.6 million people pay. So the people who are on our platform for free, they are your tourists. And people who deposit a little bit of cash, make some investment in the nation, get a passport. And suddenly the economic opportunities open up tremendously on the platform for those people. And then when you have citizens and tourists on the platform, there has to be economic activity, GDP, and trade, right? So in Rush, our trading is all gameplay, right? The GMV, as we call it in the business. And then as a nation, you also have to tax to reinvest back in the infrastructure and educate the customers and the citizens and so on and so forth. And then the nation also has its own currency to enable that trade to happen. And if you take rupees and go to the US, you are going to convert the rupees into $1 because it's far more convenient and it's cheaper because forex rates are a nightmare. And then ultimately, nation has scarce assets, ownership, real estate, natural resources, and so on and so forth, as a way to create wealth for the population. So that's a metaphor that we use to translate the vision into something real. And that's also where the blockchain piece comes into play, by the way. The currency, the scarce assets, And by the way, we launched our first NFTs, I think, in 2022. But we had to go slower on them because the regulation in India is not as conducive as we'd love to be on all things crypto. There's that work that has to be done, that everybody thinks of crypto as bad, but they don't realize the underlying technology, blockchain, is very powerful. And let's dream a little, right? Let's just hypothesize. Let's say Rush became very valuable, and customers owned 10% of it. That's a pretty big deal. And let's go even bigger and say, let's say India's online economy India's economy becomes $5 trillion, and the online economy contributes, let's say, to $1 trillion of that. And let's say somewhere along the way, the government made a mandate saying every company must have a token. They must dedicate 10% of the token to their customers. So if that happens and it's true, and there's a lot of hoops to cross there, imagine customers owning 10% of the value creation of $1 trillion. Oh my God, man. That'll move the nation forward, 50 years in a matter of 5 years. So we have some work to do here
Clearly cut out.
to figure this out. Yeah.
So recently I was talking to someone at Gamation and Ludo King. Yeah. So they were saying that Ludo King has a churn rate of 98%. But yeah, and they have almost over 1 billion downloads, if you know.
Oh,
Right.
wow.
And on the other hand, I've played Ludo by Rush, which is like a Ludo after doing MBA. It's so cool. Right. And Ludo King is like, you
Yeah,
understand.
exactly. You see it.
Yeah, we know that,
Yeah.
right? But still, like, they have 98% churn. So why not Rush is actually launching a proper casual game, not in real money gaming, but a Ludo with that graphics in like deeper game design, scaling it with IAP. Why Rush is not doing it? Please don't say it's your personal choice, but like, there has to be some economics behind it. Why you're not doing it?
Wait, explain to me the personal choice point.
Because you're seeing a lot of things that you do at Hike, or maybe someone you decide, or the framework
Yeah,
is
of course.
because
of course.
how you think, or maybe
Sure.
what you think is right. But is there something that some OKR that is working behind that, some economics, some numbers that you're playing with, and that's why you're not taking this step?
Yeah, I mean, you're starting to see it, right? Ultimately, there is a decision-making framework. And what we try to do, by the way, is showcase this framework to everybody in the company and say, even take your ideas and put it in this framework. My ideas included, right? So we have one lens of looking at things. Now, if you're building a business, you have a business model. And our business model is you participate in tournaments. 90% of the prize pool is distributed towards you. We keep, let's say, 10%, right? That's the business model. And it takes some expertise and knowledge and operational knowledge to get good at running and operating a business model and a product. So today, we are, as a company, very good at running a tournament-style, free-to-play win-to-earn business model. Very good. Do we have an opportunity to scale this? Yes, we do. Especially post the GST stuff, we have to scale it, right? And so we're very focused on that. Now, it doesn't mean opportunities don't exist around us. They do. A lot of them, right? And let's say we were to go launch, our quality of, Ludo. By the way, we have a gaming studio inside the company, which is the reason why the game is so high quality. Let's say we go launch that. What's our differentiation from Ludo King beyond our fantastic experience? That itself is a big differentiator, but ultimately, these games are a network. And I think we're the only company in the country that's built not one, but two networks. So we understand what it takes to build a network. It's very difficult. The reason why Ludo King works, by the way, despite being, I would say an average user experience, is because sab log wahi hai. So the liquidity you'll get is very high there. And also the people use it to play with friends. That is the go-to, right? So we need to innovate not only on the product, we also have to innovate on the distribution. This is the one thing I think a lot of founders, especially product founders, don't pay attention to. We also have to innovate on the distribution. We are working on something, not exactly as what you said, but let's see. Yeah, and I guess on top of this, the business model, which is the business model, is very different for Ludo King. It's IAP. And, we have a sense of their numbers, and we are 4-5x bigger than them in scale. So we also know that despite having that scale, the IAP potential so far is low. But could we go there and improve it by 10% month on month? Maybe we could. And as long as it can complement our current core business, that makes a lot of sense. Because if you go launch a separate application with a new business model, even though it's gaming, you're entering a new business, right? Versus can this business model complement the current business model? Which, by the way, makes a lot of sense because after the GST changes, a lot of our margins have reduced. So could you find a new business model that's high margin to complement the gap that we had before?
Right.
So that would be a framework through which we'll look at this and say, okay, that makes sense. Let's go stack rank it, prioritize it, and so on and so forth.
Right. So do you think now like games with Indian IP will actually be on a rise now that there are games like Sira Studios and Devas versus Asuras, like Krishna fighting Ram or something like that? These games will be on the rise now, and they'll gain they'll actually have a larger chunk of the pie.
I think it's going to still take a time. And the reason is because just because you slap an Indian theme on a game doesn't make the game fantastic. Right? The underlying game mechanics have to be really good. Really good. Like if you look at a lot of these FPS games, why do these guys from China and Korea keep doing such a fantastic job? We have some Indian companies trying, but so far they've not succeeded. Because the way the games are designed, the way the economy is designed, the way the graphics are designed, there's so much to be done. And that knowledge, I don't think, sits in India yet. We have to develop it. However, if we took one of those FPS games and put an Indian theme on it, the probability of it working is definitely higher, but you still have to figure out distribution and so on and so forth. These are complex economies, by the way. Very complex economies. And, people think of us as a gaming company. I say, no. We are a network. We're a network of play and earn. Log kyun aate hain? Entertainment, but also to earn. The game happens to be the thing on which this happens. So, like, if you were to build a PUBG ourselves, we can't do it. We will not be able to do it. Our gaming studio is very focused on casual games. So, yeah.
But have you thought on adding a wagering protocol over the existing games like PUBG or any particular Ludo King as per se, that you add a betting layer over the existing games?
Yeah, I think the idea to sort of play to win, play to earn can be extended beyond casual games. I like the idea, which is can we sort of partner with these guys and say, there's a lot of people, tens of millions of daily active users who play your product and want to win and earn. Can we figure that out? Can the tournaments be run on our platform? Will the gameplay happen on your platform? I think it's a brilliant idea. As a matter of fact, it's something we're exploring. It's a great thought.
I just lighten up the mood a little. Have you ever met Masayoshi-san?
Of course.
Yeah? Is he really a crazy guy?
I mean, he's great. He's great. He's very short.
Yeah.
But he's great. He's great. He's a maverick. He thinks larger than life. He's got a big vision for stuff. Doesn't think small. And he's a lovely person. Yeah.
And when things like we work doesn't work, so does that actually matter to him then?
Of course it does. He invested a lot of money behind that company.
Yeah.
But I think from the perspective that I have, he's gone from building a telecom company, then becoming an investor. And when you're investing, there are bound to be companies that you invest in that those investments don't work out. And the VC game or the fund game is usually a power law game, which is a couple of companies end up returning the entire fund in. Now, the scale at which he's been operating is very different. $100 billion VC vision fund, etc. And I think I'm sure some lessons were learned there. Like some of these companies didn't need the capital that was put in them. It's like just because you have $10 billion sitting in to invest doesn't mean the company needs $10 billion. They may need $500 million. So, but Masa, he thinks big. As a result of which all this stuff happens.
I think we're almost done. Just a last question that I have. I think everybody wants to know this. Who's your favorite entrepreneur in India and abroad? Like we understand Jeff Bezos maybe then, but who's in India?
So I'll tell you the ones that I really admire. 3 of them: Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos. And I have reasons, right? Steve Jobs, because his incredible focus on what we call the romantic value of the product. And there's a lovely book that I read called Zen in the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. That's where I learned these words from, where they talk about the transactional and classical value of a product and the romantic value of a product. And they describe it as if you had two bikes that had exactly the same spec in terms of engine, turbo, horsepower, cc, etc., you would think, okay, great. But one's a Ducati and one's a Harley. Your relationship with those two bikes is very different. You'll think of taking a Ducati on the track. You'll think of taking a long, coast road drive on the Harley. And that's the romantic value aspects of products. And Steve Jobs was the ultimate at doing this, because I feel like he worked, and he made this very public as well, at the intersection of liberal arts and technology. And you see it in their products, right? It's so visible. And I really loved that. And what was amazing was there was somebody in business who was like that, who'd shown success. And so as a result, it was such an inspiration. You could have that bent of mind and still be successful in business. So I really looked up to him a lot. And second is Elon Musk. Because of a couple of things. One is I love that he's working in deep tech. Deep tech is beyond the stuff we do, the apps and stuff like that. This is proper like engineering and scientific innovation, something that I probably will end up in space. I'll end up in myself. And he's one of the few entrepreneurs in the world who's built something in deep tech and has made it very successful. Rockets and electric cars. Second thing is he has an incredibly long-term view on things. I watched an interview of him a few months ago from 2007. What he was saying then, he says now. And I was like, oh, wow, okay. He's just been, and by the way, SpaceX and Tesla are 20 years old. He's just been building them for the longest time. Incredible vision, and that's the way to do it, I think, which is play your own game, right? And he seems like a complete workaholic maniac, so that's great too. And then Jeff Bezos, because of his systematic framework approach to building a company. It seems from the outside he is likely the best company builder. We borrow a lot from their way of doing things. I think those are the guys from the outside. India, I would say, I don't know. I admire what the Zerodha guys have done, the Kamath brothers, because in a market like India, it's very hard to build a profitable business. And they've done that in how, right? And so that's, I really admire that and look up to that, because they built the business in a certain way that's not VC backed and trying to pump valuations and so on and so forth. It's long-term sustainable, growth. And second is, I think you can call him an entrepreneur. I discovered this guy on YouTube, the beer biceps guy. What's his name? Ranveer. I love his channel. It is so weird and quirky, and it's all the esoteric topics he talks about that nobody else to talk about. One of my favorite channels. And so if you ask me what I do in my free time, that's what I do. I'm deep into all this stuff. So yeah.
Thanks a lot, Kavin.
Thanks.
So last question of the evening, something very related to Masters Union. Since you've already hired one of our C3 seniors, Vibhor,
Yeah.
working in founder's office, so
Right there.
close to you. So I think this question is on everybody's mind. What do you look in a person before hiring him?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, the people I love the most are people who can just deliver at the highest quality in a record amount of time. And people who make it look easy. And if you piece this down further by just, peel the layer and ask what goes into that. And I think the one trait that goes into people like this is they're radically responsible. And what I mean by that, I think, is they just take full responsibility for everything. Their emotions, their thinking, their behavior, their work, their results, everything. There is no ounce of victimization, by the way, in their minds. That is a special person. And the way they, I think, do that is they're incredibly resourceful. They always find a way. They're determined and very, very resourceful. No matter what the obstacle in your way, they'll find a way around it. Third is, I think the way to be resourceful is to think deeply about stuff. If you do a little second order thinking, first principle thinking, you can become resourceful. You can solve the problems no matter what they are. And people who collaborate. You see a lot of brilliant people who are absolute jerks. Oof, we've hired a few of them, in our company. We stay away from them. People who know how to collaborate, people who realize that there are certain things that they're great at, and they just can't be great at everything. So you have to rely on other people too. And last one I'll say is someone who's shown some resilience. If someone's been through some stuff and bounced back from it, that is very high up on my list. Because a lot, life is you get knocked down 7 times, you get back up 8. And if someone's been through that, I think it shows up in all of the above. Yeah.
So I think that would be it. It was
Great.
really great
Yeah.
having you.
Yeah.
Of course, my pleasure.
Yes.
Thanks for having me. This was really awesome. Yeah.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you so
Thanks.
much.